I Want to Hold Your Hand is a song that changed the course of history, catapulting a young band from England called the Beatles to international stardom.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something.
In just 2.5 riveting minutes, this revolutionary song is packed with interesting little anomalies that you might not have noticed, including a fascinating debate and a few monumental Beatles firsts. In this episode, we're going to explore the recording history of I Want to Hold Your Hand and point out some of its quirks. As a fair warning, once I point them out, you can't unhear this. Like a lot of the songs in the very early days of their career, I Want to Hold Your Hand was written and recorded quickly. According to their own accounts, Paul and John wrote it sometime in fall 1963 at the house of Paul's then-girlfriend, Jane Asher. They wanted to craft something to top their record-smashing hit in the UK, She Loves You, which had come out in August, and brought their new composition to the legendary EMI studios in London on the evening of October 17, 1963. John sang lead vocals,
I wanna hold your hand,
and played a distinctive rhythm guitar part. Paul sang harmony,
and when I touch you, I feel happy inside.
And played bass, using for the very first time on record his soon-to-be iconic 1963 Hofner. George Harrison contributed lead guitar, and Ringo Starr, of course, drove the rhythm with a marvelous drum part.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something.
The band powered through a series of takes, including a few pauses during which the band made minor adjustments to the arrangement.
I want to hold your hand. Take one.
And build up the beginning. Go like 1, 2.
Take two.
No, I think it should start loud.
Take four.
Do it slower. No.
Take 9.
No, the first one allows.
By take 17, everyone was pleased enough with the result that they selected number 17 as the one to use. This brings us to perhaps the most notable aspect of this session. It marks the very first time that the Beatles used 4-track tape recording. Now, that might not sound like a big deal, especially considering that a digital recording studio today has practically an unlimited number of tracks. In the early 1960s, though, things were very different. Most of the songs on the Beatles' first and second albums were created using only 2 available tracks. That meant all the instruments were usually packed on one track, and all the vocals on the other.
Twist and shout, twist and shout.
While it was possible to add more overdubbed parts, the process had significant limitations. There's a great explanation of this entire concept in the phenomenal book, Recording the Beatles. On this landmark October 17th session, though, the Beatles were given access for the first time to EMI's newer 4-track tape decks, which would eventually enable the creation of intricate studio masterpieces such as Tomorrow Never Knows, and A Day in the Life. In fact, they would use 4-track all the way until 1968, when they finally switched to 8-track midway through the recording of the White Album. But back to late 1963. With this luxury of 4 tracks at their disposal, they added a few clever finishing touches, such as John doubling his vocal part during the second bridge.
And when I touch you, I feel happy.
He also added special vocal emphasis on a few key words during each verse, a nice little effect lifted from their live act. George Harrison also overdubbed a brief but memorable guitar lick.
Please say to me.
Finally, they added some hand claps. With that, the recording of I Want to Hold Your Hand was complete. Or was it? Some fans claim that there's an organ being played along with the rhythm guitar to give it some extra oomph. I suspect this theory arose from a similar song recorded a few weeks earlier, I Want to Be Your Man.
I wanna be your lover, baby. I wanna be your man.
Their producer, George Martin, did overdub an organ there, which you can hear in the background. But I don't hear any evidence of it played here, and there's no mention of an organ in any documentation or recollections that I'm aware of. As for that fantastic guitar tone, examples abound on YouTube of players achieving a similar sound, using the same model of John's guitar here. Still, some fans are rather passionately devoted to the hidden organ theory. The organ debate is far from the only audible curiosity in I Want to Hold Your Hand. For instance, there is a faint voice whispering something at around 1:22.
When I say that something's...
Then there's the other charming little flourishes. For example, notice how on the first bridge, Paul's harmony is fairly straightforward.
It's such a feeling that my love...
For the second bridge, though, he introduces a bit more flair, especially on the word love.
It's such a feeling that my love...
At 1:52, there's also a stray woo in the background.
I can hide.
I love all of these organic little touches, which seem to resonate on a deeper level inside of us, signaling that this is indeed human-made art. As so often with the Beatles catalog, the oddities continued into the mixing as well. Initially, the song was only available in the then predominant single-channel mono format, where all the sounds were essentially packed together.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something.
But with a newer format called stereo, different sounds could be assigned to the left and the right speakers, opening up a wide variety of options for placing instruments and vocals. Since stereo was starting to become more popular by 1963, EMI did create an initial stereo mix of I Want to Hold Your Hand, but chances are you've never heard it before. That's because it was, oddly, not released until 1976, on a rare single only issued in Australia. In 1965, another stereo mix was made, but this too was only released on a few obscure regional albums. Both versions have subtle variations from the more commonly heard mix, including where the instruments and the vocals are placed, so they're worth checking out as curiosities.
I think you'll understand.
In the US, things were even more complicated. Capitol Records, the US distributor, did release a stereo version of the album Meet the Beatles, with I Want to Hold Your Hand on it. But this version was actually fake. They merely took the single-channel mono mix and applied effects like echo to make it sound sort of like stereo, which they could sell at a premium price.
It's such a feeling that my love...
The true stereo version of I Want to Hold Your Hand that you've likely heard wasn't actually created until 1966, when EMI pulled out the tapes again and created a new stereo mix for a compilation album called A Collection of Beatles Oldies. That version has been used on most Beatles releases ever since. But like a lot of their early stereo mixes, it's not particularly well regarded. In fact, audio mastering engineer Steve Hoffman once called I Want to Hold Your Hand the, quote, suckiest Beatles mix of all time. Finally, in 2023, Giles Martin, son of Beatles producer George Martin, used new audio isolation technology to revisit the tapes once again, creating a fresh stereo mix, which, to my ears at least, is a big improvement.
I wanna hold your hand.
Some fans still insist, though, that the original single-channel mono version from 1963 will always be the best. You'll have to be the judge. If the mono versus stereo mix situation weren't crazy enough, there was yet another version of the song made, but in German.
Oh, come to me.
In early 1964, while the band was touring in France, they were asked by their label to re-record the vocals to I Want to Hold Your Hand and She Loves You in German, ostensibly to help sell more records in the German language market. Now, you might think they just re-recorded the whole song, right? Well, no. The original tape from October was copied and sent down to EMI's studios in France. The band then recorded new German vocals, plus hand claps, onto the instrument track from October. As for She Loves You, though, the original twin-track tape had been tragically erased. So the band actually had to re-record that whole song from scratch. Luckily, it was the first and only time that they would ever have to do this, since I Want to Hold Your Hand, the English version, was the key that finally unlocked the door to international stardom. The single debuted in the UK on November 29, 1963, quickly selling over 1 million copies in advanced orders alone. Despite success at home, though, they had yet to meaningfully crack into the American market, which the band had long considered to be their ultimate goal. Capitol Records, which had recently agreed to distribute the Beatles in the US, decided to hold the single until mid-January, when the Beatles were scheduled to appear on The Ed Sullivan Show in New York City. But here's where things got wild. In mid-December, a radio disc jockey in Washington, D.C., following a tip from a listener, arranged for someone to bring the UK single over on a plane from London. On questionable legal grounds, he played it on air, stirring up a huge buzz. Other DJs across the country replayed it on their own stations, spreading it like a viral post on social media. Due to the pandemonium, Capitol Records changed their plans and moved up the single's release date to capture the hype. The U.S. release quickly smashed sales records and skyrocketed to number 1 on the charts, officially kicking off both Beatlemania and the British invasion. At the time, some adults might not have fully understood the song's appeal or its coming impact. For instance, a music critic in Esquire magazine dismissed the Beatles single as, quote, terrible, awful, and the group's arrival was often met with a mix of mockery and contempt in the media.
It's almost funnier than the Beatles win.
Nonetheless, the sales numbers spoke for themselves, and I Want to Hold Your Hand was eventually nominated for a Grammy Award in 1964. The rest, of course, is history. I Want to Hold Your Hand is admittedly not their most lyrically deep or technically impressive song, but for those 2.5 minutes, its energy is riveting and infectious. You can sense that even the band knows it's going to be a hit as they're playing it. Despite being one of their most recognizable and impactful songs, as of mid-2026, Paul has never played I Want to Hold Your Hand live on any of his solo tours. At long last, after 63 years, though, he finally broke with tradition for a private event, Taylor Swift's wedding at Madison Square Garden. Now, that's a special gift. It's not an exaggeration to say that I Want to Hold Your Hand is the most important Beatles song of their career. In our modern world of algorithm-driven, personalized media feeds, it's hard to even fathom a near-universal cultural moment on the same scale. Ask anyone who was alive in the United States during the mid-1960s, and they can likely tell you exactly when and where they first heard it, and the impact it had on their lives. But don't just take my word for it. I asked 2 exclusive sources that experienced it firsthand. My parents.
I remember hearing that song a few days before they showed up on Ed Sullivan. I'd actually been at the Lloyd's of Newburgh store with my grandmother, and I bought the single because it's something I thought I had heard, and I brought it home. My father goes, "Oh, I think I saw them on some show the other night." Next thing you know, within the next few days, they were like just the hottest thing ever. The words were a little bit muffled, and one of the lines is, I can't hide, I can't hide.
I can hide.
I thought they said I get hives for some strange reason. I don't know if that has anything to do with me becoming a dermatologist many years later, but that's one of the things I remember from that song.
I was 10 years old, and I couldn't wait to get home on that Sunday to tune in to Ed Sullivan. And when I heard it, I just loved it. And I loved seeing the Beatles on our television. And we clapped, and I was even allowed to scream a little bit. My mom took me to the store and bought me my first pair of Beatle boots so that I could wear them to school. I could only wear them during recess because I was in a Catholic school and I had a uniform, but for me it was a real treasure.
Do you remember when you first heard I Want to Hold Your Hand? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.